So this morning, I was filming a video trying to figure out how exactly strong Madara was at his peak strength. And while heading down this rabbit hole, I realized Madara was a lot stronger than even I gave him credit for. Sure, the window with which we saw Madara at his peak strength was a very small one, but simply within the capacity of that small window, we saw Madara pull off some of the most impressive feats we've ever seen in the Naruto universe. And thus my thinking about how powerful characters were in just the Naruto universe, not Boruto included, kind of got turned on its head, because as I sat there calculating just how big each of the meteors that Madara and his two Rinnegan form created with his Shubaku Tensei, I realized, oh, Naruto and Sasuke may not have had an answer for this if they were by themselves. And thus I became curious. Yeah, I know how strong Madara is, I just did all the calculations, but does everybody know? And thus I did the one thing that any rational human would. I popped over to Ranker, the website dedicated to fans ranking things, and I typed up Naruto strongest. And lo and behold, I came across a ranked list called the 18 strongest Naruto characters of all time. And listen, the fans did a pretty good job. The 18 names included in this list is a pretty good summation of the top 18 strongest people in the Naruto universe. But this list is not perfect. There are two very important people that are left out of this list, and a lot of the placements are iffy at best. And thus today, I want to go over this article, but more so, I want to go over the 18 most powerful people in the Naruto universe with you, and give my opinion in order of who I believe truly belongs on this list. So with no further ado, let's get directly into a second version of a video I made years ago, the strongest characters in Naruto, ranked and explained. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, some of you are probably wondering why I'm retouching on a topic that I've talked about previously. And that's because when you do this job for as long as I do, you gain access and a different understanding for a lot of the information that you previously believed you understood. And while I'm not saying any of the videos that I made previously are inaccurate, I feel as though nowadays I have the best possible understanding of Naruto as a universe as I ever possibly could, which is why I'm really excited to tackle such an important topic today. So let's get to the list with apparently our 18th spot, which is A, the fourth Raikage. Now, technically, if we weren't adding any additional people to this list, and therefore removing some people from this list, A at 18 is technically a pretty good pick here. A is absolutely weaker than the other 17 entries on this list. However, if we're doing a top 18 strongest characters in Naruto list, A doesn't make it. In A's most difficult battle, his battle against Madara alongside the other four Kage, outside of Mai, he was genuinely the least impressive. In the beginning of the battle against Madara, A goes to use a lightning chop on Madara, who's defended by his Susanoo ribcage. And A, who has no reason to not be using the entirety of his strength in this moment, does not crack said ribcage, though he is able to speed blitz Madara, kind of, in the fact that Madara is unable to dodge this chop. But Madara doesn't need to dodge the chop because, once again, A did nothing. Now, A does become more useful in this battle against Madara a little bit down the line, but only when Onoki hops on his back and starts using lightweight boulder jutsu on it, which gives A the requisite speed to later wipe out a humanoid Susanoo being operated by a Madara Shadow Clone. But we can't sit here and honestly give that feat to A because he said after failing to chop through Madara's Susanoo ribcage that he needs more speed that Onoki gave him. Now, later on in the fight, A is actually able to crack Madara's Susanoo ribcage, but one, only after Tsunade had cracked the ribcage from the front, and two, only while attacking from behind Madara. Really, in this battle against Madara, the only impressive things that A ever pulls out are while Onoki is on his back, be that defeating a humanoid Susanoo or punching Mu out of the fight. And that's not great when you consider the fact that really all A is bringing to this battle is offensive capability. For himself and himself alone, Gaara is able to use his sand to reposition the Kage and defend them. Onoki himself can fly, uses dust release, and defend the Kage using earth release, on top of being able to make certain Kage like A faster with his lightweight boulder jutsu. And maybe more importantly than anything, Tsunade is not only bringing an insane amount of offensive firepower, but is also healing all of the Kage perpetually during this battle. Once again, making the only person with a less impressive showout in this battle against Madara being Mai, who's not on this list, and for good reason. And therefore, in actuality, if I had to put somebody at 18, it would actually be Tsunade. Not only does Tsunade spend the entirety of the 5 Kage battle versus Madara healing the other Kage, but she's also only one of 2 Kage involved in that fight who's able to take out one of the humanoid Susanoo by herself. And while in this very same fight, Madara does say that Tsunade is slower than the 4th Raikage, we know that in feats of strength, A had to pseudo-cheat to beat Tsunade in an arm wrestling competition, and while Madara does say that Tsunade is slower than A, she's still able to do more damage to his ribcage than A ever was. Ties into the fact that the only reason that any of those Kage walked away from that fight is because Tsunade saved all of their lives, and while healing ninjutsu may not appear in the category of power, the ability to live to fight again is absolutely a part of being powerful. This is why we take things like Daru's regeneration ability into account when talking about his power. If you can have your legs cut off and be completely fine, that is absolutely something that should be added into the calculation of how powerful you are. So with Tsunade at 18, that brings us to our 17th spot, which I believe belongs to somebody who is not currently on this list. And for reasons I can't fully understand, because this list features Gaara, A, and Tsunade. 3 people who really don't get to show off the peak of their powers until the 4th Great Shinobi World War. But you know who else got to show off their powers in the 4th Great Shinobi World War? Onoki. Time and time again, Madara identified amongst the 5 Kage Onoki to be the only genuine threat. And time again, Onoki proved that to be 100% true. So there's only 2 people during the 5 Kage fight that land a blow against Madara that would have been fatal if he wasn't an Edo Tensei reincarnation. And those 2 people are Tsunade, who we have in our 18th spot, and Onoki, who does it twice. See, while Tsunade was the reason that the 5 Kage were able to stand back up after their battle against Madara, the only reason that any of them were even able to battle against Madara in his perfect Susanoo form is because Onoki was able to destroy the deep forest emergency used by Madara that knocked out all the Kage. On top of this, Onoki was able to use a dust release so large that it was able to wipe out 10 plus humanoid Susanoo clones, while also being able to blast through Madara's main body Susanoo faster than he could react to, dealing him what would have been a fatal blow if he wasn't an Edo Tensei reincarnation. Tie that into the fact that before this fight, the only reason that the majority of the Shinobi Alliance was still around to fight against the other reincarnated soldiers, Obito and Madara, was because the combined forces of Gaara and Onoki stopped the meteors from falling on top of the Shinobi Alliance's heads. And the only reason that A was even remotely useful in this battle is because he was helped by Inoki's lightweight boulder jutsu, and that once again, the combined forces of Gaara and Onoki, using an Earth Golem and Gaara's Sand, were able to block the rest of the Kage from being hit by Madara's Magatama. And thus, if you're going to say that any of the Kage involved in this battle against Madara were the strongest amongst them at that point in time, maybe listen to one of the most trustable sources on the matter, Madara, and put Onoki at your 17 spot. But Nick, you just said that Onoki was the strongest out of all of the Kage involved in that fight, and Gaara was placed at the 16th spot on this list. So where does Gaara go? Well, he doesn't. Listen, I have not a single ounce of doubt in me that Gaara is one of the strongest people in the Naruto universe. Whether it was being instrumental in the resealing of the majority of the Edo Tensei reincarnations, like Rasa, Gengetsu, the 3rd Raikage, and so many others, or working alongside Onoki to stop the meteorites from falling on the Shinobi Alliance, or even almost being able to seal Madara inside of a Grand Sand Mausoleum twice, Gaara's contributions to the 4th Great Shinobi World War are too many to count. And if we were talking about peak powers, including Boruto, Gaara would 100% be on this list. But since we're just talking Naruto Shippuden forms, I can't in good conscience put Gaara over Tsunade or Onoki. Yes, without his sand, the other Kage may have been hit by Madara's Magatama, and thus the fight might have ended a whole lot earlier than it was supposed to, and his mobility and sand control did absolutely allow for this fight to go on longer than it probably should have. But really, when it comes down to it, in Gaara's most important fight, his battle against Madara, his last big fight in Shippuden, all Gaara really accomplished were some defensive feats and trying to seal Madara twice. Yes, Gaara is later involved in Might Guy versus Madara, and there is technically an argument to be made there that without Gaara's help, Might Guy wouldn't have been able to land the kick that he did on Madara. But once again, what did that accomplish? And once again, that wasn't his feat. He was just carrying people. And that's kind of the thing with both Naruto and Shippuden Gaara. His most impressive feats are defensive, protecting the entire Sand Village from Datara's C2 bomb, stopping the meteorite alongside Onoki, saving the 5 Kage from Madara's Magatama. And while obviously Gaara has to have a certain amount of power to pull off any of these feats, I just can't say he's beating out other people that should be on this list. Like our actual number 16 spot, Jiraiya.
Oh, Nick, why is Jiraiya so low?
Well, because he dies and everybody else has more opportunity to reach their peaks. And I'd like to remind all of you that we're talking about peak powers today. And Jiraiya's peak is undoubtedly in his battle against Nagato, which is incredibly impressive, mind you. Jiraiya, with no information in Nagato and Konan's backyard, is able to battle against the two of them and wipe out 4 out of 6 paths of pain. And he does this with his incredibly deep bag of jutsu. See, whether it's his imperfect sage mode, the fusing of Ma and Pa to his shoulder so they can pull in Senjutsu chakra for him, his fire-based Goemon abilities, his oil abilities used in combination with his fire abilities, his Rasengan, his toad summonings, or his demonic toad confrontation chant, which is one of the most powerful genjutsu in the entirety of the Naruto universe. Jiraiya on the fly was able to deduce the weaknesses of several paths of pain and counter them, even though Nagato, who's controlling all the 6 paths of pain, knew exactly what Jiraiya was going to try and bust out. I mean, there's a reason that Jiraiya was asked to be Hokage before people like Tsunade, and that's because objectively he was stronger. Both Itachi and Kisame identified that in a fight against the two of them, nobody would walk out unscathed, and he was able to battle against Naruto with a version 2 four-tailed cloak with no intention of killing Naruto, and rather just the intention of trying to seal him. And there's not a single doubt in my mind that if he was brought back during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, like Kishimoto was too much of a coward to do, that he would be higher on this list, because a lot of the people on this list are high on this list because they came back in an Edo Tensei form simply stronger than they were when they were alive. But for the moment, I can't put Jiraiya any higher than 16. He's just outclassed by a lot of people who got to see the end of Naruto Shippuden. Like a rather controversial pick here at 15, the second person who I believe was wrongly left off this list, Hiruzen. See, one of the things that I've come to understand over the years of being a Narutuber, I guess is what you would call it, is that we all greatly, and I mean greatly, underestimate Hiruzen's strength. See, if you just, and I mean just, look at both Jiraiya and Hiruzen's stats, you'd see in the data books that technically Jiraiya has higher stats than Hiruzen, coming in with what I believe is tied for the highest rating out of anybody who's ever gotten stats from the data books, with a total number of 35.5 out of 40 possible points, with Jiraiya only losing points in Taijutsu, where he has a 4.5 out of 5, Genjutsu, where he has a 3 out of 5, and Intelligence, Strength, Speed, and Hand Seals, where he has a 4.5 out of 5. Now, 35.5 is insane so far as stats go, and it's also higher than Hiruzen's 34 total points. However, the only reason that Hiruzen has 34 total points and not 40 total points is because by the time that we get Hiruzen's stats, he's already in his late 60s, early 70s, which is why he gets a 3 in speed, strength, and stamina, docking him 6 points. But that means in ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, hand seals, and intelligence, Hiruzen gets a perfect 5 out of 5, meaning in all the ways that make a ninja, Hiruzen was objectively perfect. And he was only hampered by the slow yet unstoppable march of time. And this is backed up by multiple statements in the early parts of Naruto, as Konohamaru talks about Hiruzen as the former god of shinobi, the strongest ever Hokage. And while a lot of this gets pseudo-retconned as Hashirama becomes a more fleshed out character, it is worth noting that Hiruzen was elected as the youngest ever Hokage when he was elected, only being later surpassed by Minato, and that he was able to win 3 great shinobi world wars for Konoha. On top of the fact that he has possibly the strongest summoning in all of Naruto and was able to use that summoning to push Kurama, the biggest out of all of the tailed beasts, out of Konoha, and the fact that he was able to fight against a full-powered Orochimaru who had Tobirama and Hashirama by his side, and I get that they weren't at full power, I don't care, to me paints the story of a man who had a more impressive ninja career than Jiraiya. Now, unfortunately, this is a really hard argument to make because we don't have a lot of stats or feats for Prime Hiruzen, but we also objectively don't have a lot of tape on Jiraiya. Itachi and Kisame flee from their battle against him. When he comes up against Orochimaru in the later part of Naruto, he's drugged, and thus really the only actual fight we have for a peak power Jiraiya is his battle against Nagato. And while I think battling against Nagato in his own backyard and battling against Orochimaru, who's fighting alongside Hashirama and Tobirama, might be equally impressive feats, Hiruzen does come out victorious in his battle. Kind of. I mean, he takes Orochimaru's arms and he seals Hashirama and Tobirama. But listen, this is the one point on this list where I could genuinely understand you doing a flip-flop. If you think that Jiraiya is stronger than Hiruzen, sure. Whatever. There isn't enough concrete evidence either way. But from this moment on, there is literally no debate. Coming up at number 14, we have Tobirama. Yes, the creator of Edo Tensei, Shadow Clone, and Flying Raijin is at number 14. And listen, while Tobirama is one of the most impressive ninja of all time, and probably the greatest Hokage of all time, and a lot of ninja on this list wouldn't have been nearly as powerful as they were without his inventions, unfortunately the story of Tobirama is that of an inventor, not a perfecter. See, yes, Tobirama did create shadow clones, but he's not the best user of them, as the most shadow clones that we ever saw Tobirama generate was 3. A feat that pretty much any high-level Jonin can pull off, and a feat that Naruto blows out of the water. On top of this, Tobirama was able to use his flying Raijin to do things like his flying Raijin slash, which was able to cut down Madara's brother Izuna. Minato took the flying Raijin and ran with it, using it in a myriad of ways I don't think Tobirama probably ever would have thought of. And lastly, while Tobirama did create Edo Tensei, he mostly just brought back fodder ninjas and then had them explode themselves as their bodies were made of paper bombs, which is very powerful as it just creates a perpetual, endless explosion that's very good on battlefields, I'm sure. Both Kabuto and Orochimaru are probably better with Edo Tensei than Tobirama. And thus, when it comes down to it, the 3 things that Tobirama is known for, other people are known for being better at. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't belong on this list. Now, unfortunately, we also don't have a ton of tape on Tobirama. We know that he was able to cut down a dual MS wielder in Izuna. We know that he died in a battle against the Kinkaku and Ginkaku squad. And we know that when he pulled up to battle against Madara in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, things didn't go super well for him. However, using Tobirama losing in a battle against one Rinnegan Sage Mode Madara isn't really a big knock against him. Hashirama was barely able to defeat the dual Rinnegan Edo Tensei version of Madara, and then Madara got a power-up that Tobirama was trying to battle against one-on-one. However, Tobirama is still Hashirama's brother, and was forged in the fire of the Warring States period, where he had to battle against somebody in Izuna Uchiha, who's presumably very close to Madara in strength. Not to mention in Hashirama and Madara's last battle, while they were both still alive, Tobirama was an instrumental part of that battle, swinging for Team Senju. And listen, I will not hear arguments. We know enough about Tobirama to say that he's stronger than Hiruzen and Jiraiya. Which brings us to our 13th spot. Orochimaru. Yes, Orochimaru is stronger than anybody else on this list, at least up until this point. As after all, let's not forget that the reason that half of the people we're going to talk about today were able to fight in the 4th Great Shinobi World War is because of Orochimaru. Orochimaru has a myriad of impressive feats. Not a lot of them happen in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Like, yes, is Orochimaru responsible for bringing the 4 Kage to the war? Absolutely. But after that, they don't do that much. However, the sheer fact that Orochimaru was able to summon the 4 Hokage, and the fact that with their new and improved mind tags, they could feasibly control all 4 of them, that alone makes Orochimaru a genuine threat who could maybe be higher on this list if Tobirama probably didn't know a way to break out of Edo Tensei in the same way that Madara did, and the fact that it's heavily implied that Orochimaru wouldn't be able to control Hashirama at his true power. Outside of Edo Tensei, when you take into consideration the fact that Orochimaru was hunted by not only Konoha but also the Akatsuki for like a decade and a half, and survived all of it while making labs all across the world that they were able to do all of their experimentations on really without being hindered, battle against Naruto in his Four Tails mode without the usage of their arms, kill Hiruzen, and then end the story stronger than they ever were on account of their A, White Zetsu body, and B, the fact that they assimilated all the abilities of anybody they'd ever pulled into their circle, like Kabuto, including things like Jugo's nature energy attraction ability, Karin's life force, Suigetsu's hydrification technique, and so much more. Orochimaru, while not much of a combatant towards the end of Naruto, ends Naruto as one of the strongest characters in the universe.
Oh, but Nick Orochimaru was killed by Itachi and Sasuke, and they couldn't control Hashirama.
Well, yeah, they were killed by Itachi and Sasuke, and without Sasuke bringing Orochimaru back with Anko's curse mark, they probably would have been gone from the story forever. But all of that happens before Orochimaru's White Zetsu body upgrade, which is a massive upgrade, as not only did it give Orochimaru a perfect host, but also all the abilities that Kabuto stockpiled. But speaking of Kabuto, who could maybe be in consideration for being added to this list, but I would put him more in the low 20s, like 21 spot. Let's talk about at our 12 spot, the opposite of 21, the man who defeated Kabuto, Itachi. Now listen, I'm not being disingenuous when I say that the only person on this list thus far at their peak power that I think in a live Itachi would have been able to defeat in one-on-one combat would be Tsunade. And I think that would actually be a closer fight than a lot of you are willing to accept. However, when Itachi came back with that magical jutsu called Edo Tensei, his scaling changed substantially. See, because not only was Itachi able to break himself out of the control of Kabuto using the Kodo Matsukame of Shisui, but he was then able to battle against the likes of an Edo Tensei Nagato as undoubtedly the most important person involved in that fight, as even though KCM1 Naruto and Killer B were there, they were doing more harm than good most of the time. And while I'm not going to sit here and say that Edo Tensei Itachi stood a chance against Edo Tensei Nagato by himself, Itachi's innate understanding of how Nagato's abilities work did allow for the 3 of them to defeat him. However, figuring out how to blow up a Chibaku Tensei before it turns into into a meteor that Nagato's able to huck at the three of them isn't as impressive as Itachi's battle against Kabuto alongside his brother. See, in a hypothetical battle where Itachi was able to kill Kabuto, that fight probably would have been substantially shorter. However, on account of the fact that Kabuto was responsible for the Edo Tensei that was controlling all of the reincarnated soldiers who were battling it out in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, Itachi had to head into that battle with a handicap that he couldn't kill Kabuto. And yet, even in this battle against somebody who had assimilated all of the abilities of anybody Orochimaru had ever been with, while also mastering some iteration of Snake Sage mode, Itachi was still able to come out victorious as he was able to place Kabuto in an Izanami that made him release the Edo Tensei. I forgot to mention earlier, on account of the fact that I just remembered now, Hiruzen and 3 of his shadow clones were able to counter 5 high-level elemental ninjutsu blasts in the battle against Tobi, all the while Tobi was standing on top of the gigantic 100-hand botted stoppa that it had summoned. I think that wasn't Tobi. It's like kind of Tobi. Obito was out of the equation at that point. It was mostly white Zetsu and black Zetsu, but whatever. But that's crazy. A non-prime Hiruzen was able to counteract elemental ninjutsu of the highest order 4 separate times. I completely forgot about the B plot of black/white Zetsu battling against Hiruzen and Team Taka. Anyways, Itachi's coming in at 12. Superseded, however, by our 11th spot, Nagato. Listen, this is one of the most heated and pervasive conversations in all of Naruto fandom. Who would win in a fight, Edo Nagato or Edo Itachi? However, to me, the answer is incredibly obvious. See, because, well, yes, if the battle between Edo Nagato and Edo Itachi began while they were both initially resurrected, Itachi would have won, on account of the fact that all of the resurrections are brought back as they died, and Nagato died after using Rinne Rebirth on the entire population of Konoha, and therefore died incredibly weak, and therefore was brought back incredibly weak, and thus when he was initially reincarnated, Itachi had to carry him around everywhere. But Nagato was eventually able to absorb Tailed Beast chakra from Naruto, or Killer Bee, I don't remember which. He's able to return back to his peak physical form. And in this peak physical form, I'm not going to say Nagato is imposing. However, he does have the mobility to keep up with the likes of KCM1 Naruto, Killer Bee using his Tailed Beast transformation, and Itachi. On top of this, basically any and all ninjutsu are completely unusable against him, as he's either able to push them off himself using Almighty Push, or absorb them using his Rinnegan. And while eventually Nagato is able to be defeated by the combined forces of Naruto, Killer Bee, and Itachi, it's only 1, because Itachi knows how to stop a Chibaku Tensei, and 2, because Itachi has the incredibly specific Sword of Nunabuko, which allows for him to seal anything and anybody. However, there's not a shadow of doubt in my heart that if Itachi didn't have KCM1 Naruto and Killer Bee there helping him, that Nagato would have came out victorious in this battle against Itachi in a 1v1. And thus, on account of the fact that Nagato got brought back to life, was able to hit his stride in terms of physicality, had infinitely refilling chakra, an infinitely regenerating body, and access to all 6 of the paths of pain, including all of his summonings, then yeah, I'd say putting him at 11 isn't the most egregious thing I've ever done on this channel. Especially considering the fact that our number 10 entry on this list is Minato. Now, I've done entire videos explaining why Edo Minato defeats not only Edo Nagato, but also Edo Itachi in a fight. But just in case you haven't seen those videos, let me give you the spark notes real quick. See, without the consideration of Minato's Edo Tensei form, he would still be on this list, somewhere in the 14 to 15 range, as when he was alive, he was comparably strong to the likes of Tobirama or Jiraiya. However, the things that Minato is able to pull off after being brought back to the 4th Great Shinobi World War are kind of astounding. And this is mostly predicated on the fact that during Minato's lifetime, we never once saw him use the supposed perfect Toad Sage mode that he had his entire life. And the fact that Minato using Reaper Death Seal on half of Kurama actually made him a Kurama Jinchuriki, much like his son. And when Minato came back during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he was essentially Naruto with Flying Raijin, which is how he's able to pull off some of the most ridiculous things we've ever seen in the Naruto universe. Like the fact that he was able to teleport a large majority of the Shinobi Alliance outside of the confines of the 4-walled seal that the Ten Tails was inside of, as the Ten Tails were about to use a Tailed Beast Bomb to clear out everybody inside of it. Now this means that Minato had to get himself to 1,000+ people in a couple of seconds and teleport them outside of the barrier, which is probably the most impressive speed feat in Naruto ever. On top of that, Minato was able to place himself in front of the true secret orbs of Madara in the Might Guy versus Madara fight, proving that Minato had the ability to react to a 1 Rinnegan Madara's attack speed, which is very easily light speed. And while Minato does kind of get dogged on over the course of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, losing both of his arms, That only happens because he's constantly in battles against the likes of Obito and Dara, who are using Truth Seeker Orbs, something that nobody who doesn't have 6-pass Senjutsu is able to stop. Tie all this into the fact that Minato, while alive, was able to seal half of Kurama inside of a baby and then use Reaper Death Seal on the other half, all after defeating Yellow Mask Obito in one-on-one combat, and you have an absurdly powerful ninja. And when you give that absurdly powerful ninja infinite chakra and infinitely regenerating body, KCM2 and Sage Mode, perfect Sage Mode that is, yeah, he's gonna get the 10 spot. However, unfortunately, Minato did come up short in combat against a couple of people during the 4th Great Shinobi World War a couple of times, one of those people being our 9 spot, Obito. Yeah, I got Jubito, peak power Obito at 9, and I don't think that's unfair. See, while I do believe it is a slightly contentious topic to talk about peak power Obito as Jubito, as I believe that there's a fair amount of argument to be made that White Mask Obito with 1 Kamui Eye and 1 Rinnegan was actually stronger than Jubito. Jubito was able to wield things like the Sword of Nunabuko, a sword so ridiculously powerful that it could either create the world or destroy it. And while I don't think that Obito is planetary, as even Jubidaro was not planetary, that is still pretty impressive. However, on account of the fact that Jubito was in a stable enough 10-tails Jinchuriki to be able to use Kamui, objectively the strongest ability in his bag was taken from him when he evolved into this new form. And that's when Jubito did awaken to his strongest ever form, he became overly reliant on the Truth Seeker Orbs, which would eventually lead to the combination of Naruto and Sasuke using their majestic attire Susanoo, and the combination of the Shinobi Alliance being able to pull all of the tailed beasts out of Obito, such that Madara had to reseed control of the Ghetto statue and get all of the tailed beasts back into it because Obito just couldn't hold on to him. Now, while being able to battle against Naruto and Sasuke using a majestic attire Asano is a tall order, this is pre-boost Naruto and Sasuke. It's just dual EMS Sasuke in KCM2 Naruto, which is still a tall order. That's a tall order I think pretty much everybody above Obito on this list would be able to take on at the peak of their power, which is why at number 8, I have Might Guy. Yeah, I think 8 Gates Might Guy could have defeated Jubito in a battle. In fact, I think he could have done it quite easily. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Might Guy was as powerful as 1 Rinnegan Madara. He wasn't. Not only did Might Guy not kill 1 Rinnegan Madara, Might Guy in that fight was being helped by Kakashi, Gaara, and Minato. And while they were kind of just putting Might Guy in the right position to land a killing blow on Madara, that's still help. However, Jubito and Jubidara are not equal, even when you're considering just both of them in their 1 Rinnegan forms. This is very easily depicted in the fact that Madara is able to use Kamui to enter the Kamui dimension to steal the other Rinnegan from Obito, when Obito as a 10-tails Jinchuriki could not use Kamui, even though it's his ability. And all of this speaks to Jubito's lack of stability as a 10-tails Jinchuriki. While Jubito does absolutely have a pretty ridiculous regeneration factor, it pales in comparison to Madara's. See, because in the hypothetical circumstance that Jubito did get, let's say, fatally injured, like Madara did after the Night Guy kick or after he was cut in half by Sasuke or Naruto, well, his regeneration factor may have been able to regrow his lost parts. That amount of damage incurred probably would have broken the control that Obito had over the 10-tails, leading to the 10-tails being ripped out of him, like it was, and to his eventual death. So yeah, I think on account of the fact that Jubidara was hit by Night Guy, that Jubito also would have been hit by Night Guy. However, Jubito wouldn't have been able to recover and thus would have died. And thus, yes, I do believe that Might Guy in 8 Gates is stronger than Jubito. But there's still 7 more people that I think are stronger than both of them, and the first person out of those 7 is Hashirama. Listen, say what you will about Hashirama not being brought back at the peak of his power in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. He, in his Edo Tensei form, being brought back not at the peak of his power, had to battle against a version of Madara that was specifically engineered by Kabuto to be at the peak of its strength, with dual Rinnegan that Hashirama never had to battle against while him and Madara were having his epic clashes while they were both alive, and Madara had Hashirama's cell at that point, though he didn't have his Sage Mode. And thus Madara was given 3 additional buffs to battle against a non-peak power Hashirama brought back through Edo Tensei, and guess who wins? Hashirama. Yes, does the fight technically end with Madara as the victor? 100%, but only because Obito is forced by Black Zetsu to use Rainy Rebirth when Madara is down and out. Prior to that moment, Hashirama had pinned Madara under his God Gates, and Sai was currently sealing him away. Well, obviously, we're talking about dual Rinnegan Edo Tensei Madara here, which is pretty much the weakest iteration of Madara we saw in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. We're also not talking about a prime Hashirama. as Hashirama, like the rest of the Kage, was brought back as he died, which many assume, though nobody can confirm, was from chakra overusage. On top of this, Hashirama put on full display that his God Gates did have the ability to hamper not only the Ten Tails, but also Jubito. And considering the fact that Madara got his regeneration factor from Hashirama, I think there's a fair to good chance that if Hashirama got hit by Night Guy, he would also survive. At least one would hope, because every time Madara comes face to face with either Sakura or Tsunade, all he talks about is how Hashirama's healing factor was better and required no hand signs. But enough about the strongest Hokage, let's talk about the person often talked about as the weakest ever Hokage at number 6, because at number 6, we got Kakashi. Listen, DMS Kakashi is just straight up a problem. Anybody who is able to bang with Kaguya is gonna be at least top 6 in the verse. And DMS Kakashi was able to speed blitz Kaguya with a Raikiri. And not only did Kakashi have the speed to keep up with Kaguya, who is, spoiler alert here, the strongest person on this list, but technically in the battle against Kaguya, he couldn't use his full power. See, the thing about DMS Kakashi that makes him so terrifyingly powerful is the fact that not only does his Raikiri have Kamui connected to it, but also the fact that the Shuriken he throws with his full body perfect Susanoo also have Kamui connected to them, meaning that anybody who manages to survive being hit with this Raikiri or the Shuriken is immediately sent to the Kamui dimension. Now, the reason that I say that he wasn't fighting at the peak of his abilities is because he was fighting a dimension hopper, and thus there was really no reason for Kakashi to send Kaguya to the Kamui dimension, as that would just give her time to rest and recover. She could come back really whenever she wanted. But you tie all this into the fact that Kakashi also had the intangibility Kamui that Obito had his entire life, and not only was Kakashi hurling school bus sized Kamui-laden Shuriken, but he was also basically impossible to hit. And if you did hit him, well, it probably didn't matter on account of the fact that he had a perfect Susanoo. But enough about Kakashi, let's get to our number 5 spot, because coming up at number 5, we have Sasuke. Yeah, not 2, not 3, 5. Listen, I'm not trying to take anything from Sasuke. The strongest he ever gets in Naruto is in his battle against Naruto, their second Valley of the End fight. See, because in this fight, Sasuke becomes a pseudo 10-tailed Jinchuriki who controls 8.5 of the tailed beasts. And Sasuke is able to use the power of these 8.5 or so tailed beasts to superpower basically everything about himself. Whether that be his full body perfect Susanoo or Indra's arrow, his 6-Tome Rinnegan teleporting based abilities, or even just his standard MS abilities like Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi, this iteration of Sasuke was able to do things that we never dreamed Sasuke would be able to do. And that's most likely because up until this moment, he simply wasn't able to do them. See, becoming a pseudo 10-tailed Jinchuriki addressed all of the problems that Sasuke had previously to this battle against Naruto. See, the reason that Sasuke leaned on his curse mark so much in the early parts of Naruto was because his chakra reserves paled in comparison to that of Naruto's. However, with Sasuke able to siphon off the chakra of 8.5 tailed beasts, he was able to apply his arguably highest in the verse level of ninjutsu mastery at its highest possible level. See, previously to this moment, while Sasuke probably always was technically able to use Indra's arrow, he didn't have the chakra to do so. And this corroborated by the fact that Sasuke, while the Jinchuriki of 8.5 tailed beasts, still runs out of chakra in this fight, putting on full display just how incredibly chakra depletive a lot of the abilities that he was using were. Whether those be his heavily hand power, Kagutsuchi applied to Chidori or used defensively, or even the maintenance of a Madara-sized perfect Susanoo. Now, obviously, this is not the strongest version of Sasuke we ever saw, as that would be adult Sasuke even with one arm. This iteration of Sasuke was a massive upgrade on any version of Sasuke that we'd seen previously, but it still wasn't enough to put him over our number 4 spot, because coming in at number 4, we have Naruto. Yes, the main character does not finish this story as the strongest person in it. Unless, of course, you count episode 700 where Naruto's getting married, at which point he may be the strongest person in the verse, but that's technically blank period according to the manga. You don't see it in the manga. I mean, we do see the first chapter of Boruto in the manga, but whatever. We're doing end of the 4th Great Shinobi World War. Anyways, Naruto is in 4th, and we're obviously talking about Naruto's Sage of Sixth Path Yang Mode boosted KCM2 form, the form that he uses against Chubidara, Kaguya, and then Sasuke. Now, there's a lot of people out there who believe that this is actually Naruto's strongest ever form, and I can't necessarily fault them for that, mostly on account of the fact that we've never seen Naruto use that Yang form ever again, which has led many people to ask the question as to whether or not Naruto still has Sage of Six Paths chakra, to which the tentative, though non-provable answer is yes. But the reason that so many people believe this is probably the strongest ever iteration of Naruto is twofold. One, because in this form, it appeared as though Naruto had some godlike healing factor that he was able to apply to other people, like Might Guy and Kakashi. And two, because in this form, Naruto could use one of the most broken jutsus in the Naruto universe, Truth Seeker Orbs. However, slowly but surely over the course of his battle against Kaguya and Sasuke, these Truth Seeker Orbs got whittled down one by one until eventually Naruto had none left. But based off everything that we saw from other truth-seeking orb users, they could simply generate new ones, so Naruto should be able to do that, and yet he never has. And these aren't the only moves that we never saw Naruto use again. As in Sasuke's battle, Naruto made 3 Karamas, jammed them all together, and made a 3-faced, 27-tailed, 6-armed Kurama that threw 2 giant Rasen Shurikens. His 6-path Ultra Big Ball Rasen Shuriken, which we've never seen used again, his favorite War Arc move, the Tailed Beast Rasen Shuriken, combined the absolute destructive power of a Tailed Beast Ball with the cutting power of a Rasen Shuriken. Now, placing Naruto in this 4th spot is relatively obvious, because Naruto beats the version of Sasuke that we'd literally just talked about. And no, their fight was not a tie. Sasuke admits at the end of the fight that he lost. Naruto wasn't trying to kill Sasuke. Sasuke was trying to kill Naruto. Naruto forced a win state for him and not Sasuke. On top of that, Naruto comes out of that fight with 2 arms, Sasuke doesn't. So Naruto's gonna get our number 4 spot. But Nick, if Naruto and Sasuke are 5 and 4, who are your top 3? Well, rounding out that top 3 is gonna be none other than the man who should have been the final boss of Naruto, Madara. Yes, I do believe Madara ended his story in Naruto stronger than Naruto or Sasuke ended theirs. Listen, the idea for this video was literally made off the fact that I wanted to figure out exactly how powerful 3 Rinnegan Madara was. And the conclusion to that video was insanely strong. See, not only do we have claims from people like Hagoromo saying that Madara was rapidly approaching his level of power, mind you, those claims were made while Madara only had 1 Rinnegan. Madara with 3 Rinnegan, one of which being a Rinne Sharingan, should really only be talked about in terms of power, with other people who also had 3 Rinnegan. Not only was the regeneration factor of a 3 Rinnegan Madara almost infinite, as over the course of 5 or so manga chapters, a 1 Rinnegan Madara was able to recover from being kicked in half, sliced in half, and then chopped in half with a sword. He tanked a Night Guy kick from 8 Gates Might Guy, a lava release Rasen Shuriken that cut down the God Tree, which mind you has a diameter of roughly 5 kilometers, and then had his legs cut off by Sasuke's Chidori Katana, all of which he recovered from. And while there's no reason for us to believe that his regeneration got any better with the 2nd and or 3rd Rinnegan, his regeneration doesn't need to be any better. He held within himself not only the 10 tails, but also the God Tree in its entirety. His Shibaku Tensei summoned 23 meteors, effortlessly, all of which are calculated to be somewhere between 10 and 15 kilometers across. And if Naruto and Sasuke hadn't stopped those meteors, everybody in the Shinobi Alliance and the majority of the people on Naruto's continent would have died. And while it seemed as though both Naruto and Sasuke were able to counteract anything that 3 Rinnegan Madara threw at them, as they were able to counteract the Chibaku Tensei and outlast the Infinite Tsukiyomi using Sasuke's Susanoo, while also being able to come into contact with the True Seeker Orbs wielded by Jubidara, I don't think Naruto or Sasuke in a 1v1 with 3 Rinnegan Jubidara would be able to come out victorious. A lot of the successes of late game Naruto are predicated on the fact that all of Team 7 is fighting alongside each other. If we use just Sasuke's end of Shippuden form, which technically is not possible if he's fighting against Jubidara, as a possible way to counteract the strength of Jubidara, even this impossible matchup doesn't seem all that advantageous for Sasuke. See, both Sasuke and Madara would be entering this fight as 10 Tails Jinchuriki. However, Madara is a real 10 Tails Jinchuriki, which means he gets access to things like the Truth Seeker Orbs. He also absorbed the entirety of the God Tree, which was a massive boost to his regeneration and his chakra reserves. He has 2 more Rinnegan than Sasuke, one of them being a Rinne Sharingan, which is like the name brand version of the Rinne Sharingan that Sasuke has. He has the Hashirama Cell and Hashirama Sage Mode, and multiple decades more battle experience than Sasuke. And listen, we saw weaker iterations of Sasuke and Madara go up against each other head to head, and it did not go well for Sasuke. He had to get tentacle pumped by Kabuto to be brought back into the fold of the battle. And though Naruto was able to prevail over the strongest version of Sasuke we ever saw in Naruto, as we very clearly established, I believe that Jubidara was stronger than that iteration of Sasuke, and that fight against Sasuke was close. So yeah, I do think Jubidara ends his story stronger than Naruto and Sasuke, though obviously on account of him being dead, he's outclassed by the time that Boruto comes along. Well, with Madara out of the way, let's get to the other 2 people on this list who have 3 Rinnegan. Starting off with our number 2 spot, Hagoromo. Now, to this point that I should tell you, neither the list that I'm critiquing nor my list include Hamura. Is that fair to Hamura? Probably not. Hamura was as involved in the 3-month battle against Kaguya as Hagoromo was. We have like legitimately no feats for Hamura. We know that he maybe had a Tenseigan, but even that is kind of hazy. So for the purposes of this list, think about Hagoromo as an extension of Hamura, like the rest of us do. Hagoromo is an incredibly easy lock at 2 on this list, which makes the idea that Hagoromo is 5 on the ranker list kind of insane to me. Hagoromo is literally the god of shinobi, the sage of 6 paths, the reason humanity has ninjutsu. His treasured tools alone were enough to make some people the strongest fighters in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. As Kinkaku and Ginkaku, using only 4 of the treasured tools of the Sage of 6 Paths, were able to be so powerful that one of the strongest Hokages in existence, Tobirama, didn't stand a chance against them, and when they were reincarnated and reunited with said tools, it took multiple Kage-level fighters to seal them back away. Now, mind you, these aren't the only tools that we know that Hagoromo ever created, as we've also learned in the most recent light novel trilogy, Retsudan, that Hagoromo, for a poor desert nation, created a ninja tool that was capable of creating an infinite water source. Not to mention, he is now an extra-dimensional being who has the ability to freely travel between the Pure Lands and Earth's dimension, and still, even post-death as this extra-dimensional being, has the strength and power to give additional strength and power to people like Naruto and Sasuke. Power that, mind you, allowed for Naruto and Sasuke to fight on par with the likes of Jubidara and Kaguya. His legacy of strength is so incredibly legendary that his 2 sons that are only quarter Otsutsuki also became essentially extra-dimensional beings as their vestiges were passed down through generations. He had an over 1 kilometer tall Susanoo, compared to the other biggest Susanoo we've ever seen, which is Madara's, which clocks in at about 330 meters, that was able to stand equal in height to that of the Ten Tails. It was a Ten Tails Jinchuriki with creation of all things jutsu, which essentially gave him lifelong and permanent Izanagi, meaning anything he wanted to be reality simply could be if he had enough power to do so. And he was the wielder of the Sword of Nanabuko, which he could use at the fullest of its power. That is to say that he could use to either make the world or break the world. He, in the era of Naruto, is the first planetary threat we ever came across. And while he said Madara was approaching his level of power, we never know if he truly fully got to it. Him being placed lower than Madara, Sasuke, and Naruto is insane. He literally split his power in half to Naruto and Sasuke. He gave Sasuke his yin release and Naruto his yang release. He had both. That's just bad math from everybody who voted. But he's not our number 1 pick. But before we get to our number 1 pick, I want to go over all the points at which I've disagreed with this list, so I can give you my list in comparison to what appears to be the community's list. So in review, the ranker list had A at 18. I had Tsunade. At 17, the ranker list had Tsunade. I had Onoki. 16, they had Gaara. I put Jiraiya. 15, they put Orochimaru. I put Hiruzen. At 14, both me and the list agreed, which is actually very rare here, as we both put Tobirama. At 13, the list put Jiraiya. I put Orochimaru. At 12, the list put Kakashi. I put Itachi. At 11, the list put Might Guy. I put Nagato. At 10, the list put Pain, which I thought was interesting. I put Minato. At 9, the list put Minato. I put Obito. At 8, the list put a bafflingly high Itachi. I put Might Guy. At 7, the list put Obito. I put Hashirama. At 6, the list did put Hashirama above Obito, which was good, but I put Kakashi. At 5, the list put Hagoromo, which is the worst pick on this entire list. I put Sasuke. At 4, the list put Madara. I put Naruto. At 3, the list placed Sasuke. I said Madara. And at 2, the list said Naruto, and I said Hagoromo. But for only the second time in this entire list, at the number 1 spot, me and the list agree: Kaguya. Obviously, if you guys, the Naruto community, weren't able to figure out who the strongest person in Naruto's timeline was, I was going to be severely disappointed. I mean, I'm severely disappointed by the list already, but I would have been even more severely disappointed. Kaguya is the mother of all chakra, the first Otsutsuki we ever saw, a wielder of the Rinnegan Sharingan, one of the 2 users of infinite Tsukiyomi ever, one of, if not the most powerful dimensional hopper we've ever seen, even amongst the Otsutsuki, as well she, like all other Otsutsuki, had access to Yamatsu Hirasaka, She also had the ability to rip parts of dimensions to her current location. She had multiple Keke Tota, like her expansive True Secret Orbs or her Ash All-Killing Bone. She was able to battle against a DMS Obito, a DMS Kakashi, all of Team 7 with their amps, and only lost because Naruto and Sasuke were able to touch her simultaneously. An objectively kind of bullshit win state if we're being real. And yet with all of this taken into consideration, she pushed the strongest ever version of Team 7 to their absolute breaking point, requiring things like Obito giving up his life to make sure that Team 7 could fight on. She was so powerful that she was legitimately planning for a war against the Otsutsuki on Earth, one that she had to feel even remotely confident in the fact that she could win based on the fact that she was planning for it. On top of this, we know, though it was a surprise feat, she was able to rip Ishiki in half, something that maybe even a Baryon mode Naruto wouldn't have been able to do. And thus when it comes down to it, yes, Kaguya is very obviously the strongest ever person we saw in the Naruto universe. And with that, you have my top 18 strongest people in Naruto ranked and explained. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Whose list do you think is more accurate? Mine or Rankers? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, apparently I need to vote in more of these articles.